Hey Rhys,
Morning, Simon.
how you
Bloody
doing, man?
good morning. It is very, very dark and grim here, to be honest, in Auckland.
You know, here in London, it's also very, very, very dark. Super
Cool,
dark.
great start with weather chat.
So we've had a little hiatus. We've had a little gap between our last podcast and this one. And do you know what? I know we talked about this before, but in that short period of time, it's like the wheel has been invented 10 times over when it comes to AI, right? I mean, it's crazy. Crazy stuff going on.
It has. And I'm all backed up with things we haven't talked about. Right. The thing I've been hearing a lot this year is 2024 year of the proof of concept. Everyone's just last year people were like, what the hell is this? This year people are just building stuff. Like building and building, and it's impossible to keep up with things that are coming out.
I think the thing that I've noticed is in the last 2 months as well. I don't know why, but so many more clients are talking about AI and how they can use it within the work that we're delivering for them as well. And this is a perfect example here, the pace of change in just 2 months, why people are so not lost, but they just don't have a starting point. They're not at the starting line at the moment because there's so much going on. The pace is so fast as well. So there's just they think they know what they want to do, but there's at the moment, how can we deliver this as well? And I just feel that this is the year 2024 is going to be the year where people are going to have to stop talking about it and start doing it based on what the clients are telling us they need to deliver this year. So I know that we, as a business, we have set ourselves the goal of coming up with a minimum of 10 go to market AI strategies this year. So the more of this that we dig into, the better those assets or those go to market things, whatever we create, will be better.
Totally. And one thing I've been thinking about with some of the clients or the clients we hope to work with all this AI stuff is it's moving so fast that the gap between the people who make decisions and the people who actually do is just getting wider and wider. And those decision making people are hesitant to invest in anything and because they don't understand what it could be because they're not doing, they're managing. And I think that's kind of slowing things down to an extent because the people who are managing just don't get it. They don't get that it's like just build.
Well, we had an interesting conversation, didn't we, recently with someone who their perception was that we would create vast amounts more content by pressing just a few buttons. And it was really interesting when we had to have that conversation about yes, but there has to be a layer of human involvement here and a human involvement here. And the level of stylistic content that you're requesting there is not something you can just press a button with.
100%. I mean, conceptually, you can have the person with the idea, I think, can execute at a greater scale.
Yeah,
Like, if I want to go and make a documentary, I think I could do it far better today with the tools than I could a year ago.
yeah.
And I think that's the exciting thing for me is I can just go and build something that I haven't. It won't be perfect, and I'll need to hand it off to Matt, our video guy, to make it not look like rubbish. But I can get it to 70%, and I think that's the exciting thing for a lot of people. Right,
Right.
hitting the list. The first thing
Yeah.
on here I just think's interesting came out about a month ago, but OpenAI AI now generates about 100 billion words per day, which is fucking mental. Um, all people on Earth generate about 100 trillion words per day. Any thoughts on that, Simon?
We've just done some really basic schoolboy maths. We've worked out that that's the equivalent of like 1.5 million books. Yeah, that says to me that that means there's going to be a lot more content making a mess out there. That's what that is.
Yeah, so knock on from that, Upwork released an interesting study. the other day, which it basically just tracks what jobs are in decline on its freelance platform and what jobs are um, increasing. And unsurprisingly, after that, the three categories with the largest declines are writing, translation, and customer service jobs. Writing and translation, not shocking. Uh, yeah, it's right down the bottom. Writing's here. The number of writing jobs declined 33%, which
Wow.
is crazy. This graph doesn't actually seem to map to what the stats say. But uh, yeah, writing jobs are dropping hard, which is not necessarily a good thing, I don't think, uh, unless you're hiring writers, of course. But that is, I don't think it's a surprise, but it's sad. And it makes me wonder where all the interesting writing's going.
We know that there are organizations out there developing their own content tools, AI content tools as well. Um, and I think what this means that if you're taking away the writers and you're not replacing them with, or you're not considering them an editor or a curator, and you're just taking them out, you're just relying on churning out content. And I don't think anyone at the moment, all the people I'm speaking to that are developing this, I don't think anyone's confident that the quality will be there for quite some time. Because as we've talked about before, you're still just skimming, just you're skimming from what's already out there. So you're just recycling content and just putting it in a slightly different bucket. So there's without that the skill set that enables someone to spend less time on the research, less time on that desk research, less time on putting the skeleton together, and no time, but spending no time if you get rid of them on actually crafting the content. I think again, going back to the 1.5 million books that's currently being created, and I'm sure that'll be 2 million books by this time next week. There's a lot of content out there which is just going to be pretty average. And to stress again,
Yeah.
Bruce, because we have this conversation all the time, this is not us being protective. This is not us saying, oh, you must have manual writers. We've worked out, we've been doing this for a year and a half now, researching what's out there, how we can manipulate tools, how we can develop our own tools. AI is fantastic for allowing us to be much, much better, much, much faster. So it's not like we're saying, stop AI right now. It's like asking to turn the internet off. AI must continue, but there has to be an element where we are putting some human creativity into it as well, and original thought at the top. That's key. So you're right, not a surprise. Maybe a slight worry. The same for the video editing production. I can see the speeding up of that. Translation's a no-brainer, right? Translation is a no-brainer. And I've worked with some awful translation agencies who I don't know how they managed to last as long as they did. So I'm not hugely sad to see that number so high. But yeah, writing.
Of course. Well, I wonder a different framing of this is it the same thing I sort of talked about before of I can now MVP a video to 70%? Is the same thing happening with writers? People are going, I don't need someone who actually writes because ChatGPT can get 70% of what I want. So it's moving craft out of the way. It's moving craft out of the equation. And the idea is moving to the fore. It's people who can think and have a clear idea and can communicate it, but maybe don't want to do the copywriting or don't want to structure it in the shape of a blog or a ebook or whatever they're trying to write. Is that what's happening with writing? And writing's probably the easiest use case in the first one. I think in a lot of ways, writing a little bit image as well are sort of leading all of the changes. So like we'll see it in words and then we'll see it in images and then we'll see it in video production. The same sort of trends of craft moves out of the way and people as it gets better and better and people can produce what they want with less technical skills.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of like utopia. If you can just press buttons, you can put a subject that you want to talk about, and it does it superbly. And maybe that's where it ultimately goes. But I'm still struggling to understand where the originality, the uniqueness comes if you're just using existing content, existing ideas, good content, good creative content starts with ideas, people's original thoughts, people's original thinking. And otherwise, it's just going to be newspaper style where you're all reporting on the same story, and it's you're just reporting from the same press conference. Good journalists, good newspapers sell, online gets read based on how do we take this story to the next level. Don't think AI is going to be doing that because it's
Yeah.
just using the same content. And I think also it's going to depend on what's the goal. Why do you use content in the first place? Right? This right now, if your world is just drowning Google in 500 SEO optimized articles, fill your boots. You can do that right now, right? You can absolutely do that right now if that's your goal. But if you're like one of these companies, and most of the companies we work with, they have to be able to elevate the conversation to different audiences, and they have to be able to speak to an audience of very senior C-suite executives. They have to be able to talk to programmers. They have to be able to talk to consumers, users of these products as well. Now, if you're trying to talk to the execs, people aren't stupid. You can tell when something's been written by a bot. You really can, and they need something original to consume. People do need stuff that's original to consume. So if you're trying to engage and influence, not just drive people to your website, then I do think this is a problem, or it could be a problem.
Yeah, for me, it's more the how things are structured because what you're talking about, it's not just the AI, it's I have an original thought. So the input is the person with the original thought, and they can use all of these tools without having to learn how to be a video editor or learn how to be a copywriter or learn how to be a Photoshop expert. So now it's just a person with an idea, and they have all the tools but none of the skills to create what's in their head. So the original input is the person. A question for you is, how the hell do you hire for someone like that?
Um, I think it's still the same answer that we came up when we first started talking about this. You hire someone who's more of a skilled editor. So I do think the role is changing in that respect because we might not want to go off and hire 10 writers. We might want to go off and hire three really good creative editors, people who can control the content, they can curate that content as well. And I think that's the role. If you're in marketing, um, and you know about marketing ops, you know about different channels, you know how to reach people, and you're using AI for that. That's one thing. But if you're not a skilled editor, the content you're going to be putting in those channels is still going to be the same type of content that everyone else is going. The challenge is, the skill is, how do you, even if you're not writing it, elevate the story? How do you make that story more unique?
So you've jumped ahead because I want to ask you some questions. I sent you an essay, which I don't know if you've read or not, Simon, but we briefly chatted about, and it's about the abstraction era of how all of this stuff is what happens in a world when first-hand knowledge isn't what we're looking at, when Google isn't serving us 5, 10 different sources and we are selective about which sources we trust, but instead a machine is reading all the sources and serving us a summary of all of them that it thinks is the most objective, correct answer. Um, like what happens to truth, what happens to what we trust, what happens to the way information is served to us. Uh, Massively interested in that. But a conversation I had with someone else recently was about, I watch a lot of basketball. Well, I say I watch a lot of basketball until the playoffs start in about March, April. Until March and April, I reckon I watch about 20 minutes of basketball a week and then consume about 4 hours of basketball podcasts and news and things around basketball. Is it the same in football?
It's exactly the same. Absolutely the same.
It's about like the culture, the abstracted culture around the sport and the things you're talking about of like, how can we create other things and other things and other things? And this whole idea of abstraction culture is kind of fascinating to me because the thing isn't what's important anymore. It's like the buzz around the thing. And it's a weird time.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's a natural progression of technology, right? I speak to my kids now, and my 22-year-old, I speak to her about how do you do a piece of research, just finished university. How would you do a piece of research? And she talks about all the input, the programs she uses, the research program she uses, and she talks about Google and the access Google gives you, and then she can cross-reference it, and then she'll go to another source that she trusts. She might then go to the library because there's a book that she trusts more, just to verify and back it up. So that's kind of like how she would that's how her generation that I see, use technology. But then I asked my 14-year-old, she's chat GTP all the way. It's just like, well, I just put this in and it goes off and it finds me stuff, and then I'll build my essay around that. It's the evolution, right? So the next step of this evolution is I think we are moving into this abstract world where there's no one single source. It's just, I asked Google, what are England's chances of winning the European Championships? Or I asked that into my search engine. I just asked that, or I just shout the question out, and all of a sudden there's like this condensed response to it. It's just the next natural evolution. I think we're just going to have to go with it. And I think the difference between when I was growing up as a kid in the 80s and then the 90s, technology was slow. And now it's getting faster and faster and faster. And change is happening so quickly that I don't think we're even noticing it anymore. You just don't bat an eyelid anymore.
But for me, in that research model and the abstractionism that we're talking about and how your daughter uses it, um, like what happens in gray areas like politics? Like what if I was typing in who should I vote for? What are you getting back? And what about the gray areas of life? When you have some abstraction engine that answers all your questions rather than you seeing news on both sides, or like that's the curiosity for me. Like who's deciding what's good and what's bad, and are we giving up some level of,
Yeah,
I don't know if free
I
will
think
is the right word, but what are we giving up?
then I think society is going in a wrong direction because if I'm having to ask someone's opinion for who I should vote for, then I'm an idiot. This is a gain that there's always been. Oh God, Nina, my wife would kill me for saying this because I'm sometimes too simplistic. There's always been dumb people and curious people. That's it. You're either dumb or you're curious, right? And I would hope that in this world there are more curious people than dumb people, because a curious person would maybe ask that question just to see the response it gets. And there might be some arguments to make them think, but then they're going to go off human interaction rules. I'm going to go off and then I'm going to make my own mind up. I'm going to go off because I want to find out more about what this said, and I'm going to go and find my own source for that as well. Dumb people, it doesn't matter. You're either gonna just let life roll over you and just you know and fall for that crap and be dumb enough to actually accept an answer that who should I vote for? Oh, you should vote for this person. The world's full of that. It's always been like that. You don't need AI to influence people. If you're going to be influenced, you're going to be influenced. If you're easily influenced, you're going to be easily influenced. Whether it's AI or someone telling you down the pub you should vote for this person.
Yeah, yeah, I guess the question I'm getting to is like what happens to subjectivity in these machines? If Google ceases to be the central place people go and get their information, instead it's an objective thing that gives you objective answers and truths, do people become less curious because there's a black and white machine telling them it's this or it's that? Um, what's the role of the New Yorker or like someone writing an op-ed, or and how does that fit into all of this is probably my big question.
I think we're facing this challenge now though. I look at like key moments over the last 5 years. I think it's too easy to stumble across a very strong opinion, a very subjective opinion, not an objective opinion already. And yes, obviously, if there's no option, if Google suddenly, doesn't exist and it's just you're just asking something a question and it just gives you a very, succinct response without quoting any sources or citing any sources where it's got it from, then yes, that's just the next stage. That's the next evolution. But I, I don't know. I just it, you're right. It's a really good, compelling question to ask and to really ponder upon. But again, I still think it comes back to we got to the moon. We landed on the moon. We've done these most amazing things because we're curious. If the society just suddenly decides that we're just going to let something form all of our opinions and we're not going to question it, we're dead. I think humans are too intelligent overall to let that happen. I really do.
Completely, and I don't think it's a complete whitewash. I think it's more the mechanisms of scale and how it subtly moves the culture rather than overtly says you will vote for this. It's more people are lazy as well. I have a person who works in sales, and she just says salespeople are inherently lazy. It's her favorite quote. And people are lazy, and people don't go and look for multiple sources. And making it easier and easier and giving more concrete information, I think, erodes people's ability to be curious.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But more context of that is I come from an analog world. I was born into an analog world. And then I look at the generation that are below us. So I've got the hindsight of what it was like to actually not be able to press a button and your food's delivered. If we wanted something,
Mhm.
we had to go and get it. You can't just have someone delivering it to you. That sort of stuff. I know I sound like a really old man now, but it does annoy me. Get off your ass and go and get your own food. You don't need to do that. Right. So I've got that experience. And I think I've got common sense in as much as I don't let people influence me without forming my own opinion. And then I look at the generation that we're going through now, where the internet came along, this mass publication of opinions, and whoever shouts the loudest gets heard the most. And then there's tricks of how you influence different, moments in time as well. And there was no way. There's no one's been policing it. No one's been because it's just become a new thing. And I think people are going to look back. I'd like to think people are going to look back in 20 years, maybe 30 years' time, where we've gone through the pain of this wild west of anyone can say anything and get away with it and use any tactics. And they're going to look back and think, shit, me, that was rough. That was a tough transition from analog into digital. And now we've got some boundaries in place. We've got some common sense in place as well. And I think I'd like to think as much as technology is evolving, the way we use technology is going to evolve as well. Otherwise, we're screwed. And doesn't worry about the robots are coming. We're screwed. We are if we are going to let technology just answer our questions, we're just going to forget how to do things, and our evolution just suddenly becomes a like that.
Yeah, and that was philosophy with Simon and Rhys. That's what people come here for. Absolutely.
Oh dear.
I
Moments.
might jump ahead while you're catastrophizing, actually, to a section called Crisis Corner.
Love this.
Uh, yeah. So this one is just about underground sites making fake IDs. And apparently it's just much easier for like young people are just using deep fake stuff to make fake IDs, which I don't think is a new problem. You still need all of the like skills, like all of the hardware to print an ID and create it. But I just think it's funny that young people continue to make fake IDs and use technology. I don't think it's destroying the world. There's all these knock-on implications of like people who are serious about it can open bank accounts and do all that stuff, and that's horrible and very serious. But yeah, the fake ID battle continues.
Jesus Christ, I probably got arrested for saying this, but it shows that there is that element of humans that, of course, as underage, you want to buy beer, right? We all did it. We all wanted to buy beer. We all wanted to break the law. We didn't think it was breaking the law. We've always had that. We've always had that desire to do that. Again, though, what technology is doing is just amplifying it, right? It's making it much easier and much more prolific to be able to get something like that. Problem's still the same though. It's still humans having to come up with a solution for this.
A firm in Hong Kong got deep, like just absolutely AI faked people were jumping on like Zoom calls, like fake people. They were using masks, so not masks, like filters over their face to look like other people. They lost $200 million,
Jesus.
um, which is wild. And I think it's like from what I read in the article, it's kind of a sophisticated version of those phishing emails. Of like you get that email from your boss that says, "Hey, I need $500 in Apple gift cards." They obviously weren't using Apple gift cards; they were like bank transfer, blah blah blah, business transactions. But the fact that you're using like fake Zoom calls and things like that is, what do you trust anymore? Uh, yeah, that's a concern.
Jesus. I mean,
Um,
that's just again another demonstration of how, as much as we're amazed at the possibilities of this AI, again, common sense has got to catch up. How do you stop this? You can't stop criminals at all, but you must be able to have ways
yeah,
of stopping this. If we can develop the technology that enables this, we must be able to develop the technology that catches up with it as well. Surely there must be.
yeah, but it's always going to lag. You can't solve a problem until you see it, right? So,
You see, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
um, last one on this. There's a couple more, but we don't need to go into them. Air Canada basically
Oh.
like deployed an AI chat, and then just started giving refunds to people, and they've basically been told that like it's on them, it's on the company, and they have to honor it, because it's there. Which I love a little bit. I'm like, but it's probably a good lesson for companies that are looking to deploy things, that do
Oh,
serious business transactions. Like you can't just wipe your hands of it and be like, no, the AI messed up. Like this isn't our fault. Like it's on you to make sure it works.
Jesus. That see, mate, like we were laughing and I read the fact of like the context of the story. It was the bereavement policy. But this again,
Yeah,
surely not just you can't wipe your hands because chatbot did it, but surely you can't wipe your hands of of, of no human intervention. Let's just let's just go for it.
yeah,
Again, this there has to be common sense. There has to be an element of human interaction. What also interests me about that is obviously ServiceNow is one of our clients, and you are now being followed by ServiceNow everywhere you go.
yeah, 100%. Cool. Let's blast through some final bits. You've seen the Sora release. Do you have any thoughts on all of it?
Um, I think it's brilliant. I do think it's brilliant because I look at our team, and this is exactly the sort of tool I look at and think this can help us be more put more creative time into it. So I think again, if this is used properly, this is going to be. We keep saying game changer about these things, but I do think this is going to be a game changer. What do you think?
Yeah, I just think it's cool. I'm kind of like, let me have it. Let me see
Yeah.
what I can do with it. Let me make something. Uh, I imagine what I make is not going to look anything as good as this. It'll be a little bit horrific. Uh, but yeah, let me at it. There's not a lot of hands in most of it.
Do you know that? See, that's an interesting point. As if we skim through these images,
I don't know.
so, like a presentation that we did using AI. No disrespect to you or I, the content was excellent, but the design of the interactive essay we were building looked pretty poor because we're not
Mhm.
designers. And it's like you just hit the nail on the head when you said, I'd like to have a play with this, and you'll make something that's fun, and we both go, wow, that's really cool. But we won't go, yeah, you could broadcast that, you could use that, you could publish that. You would need to have like someone from our team, our production team, Matt and Yolanda. You'd need them involved in this, or you need Kai or Chris from the design team polishing it. There's still an element where this needs to be polished. You need to have a skillful eye to create this.
This one. Yeah, that's completely true. I think you need the people with the taste and the skill, and I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but that's where it seems to be trending is you need taste makers. You just need people with taste who know how to make things look good. And it's more curation than it is creation. Uh, this one, doesn't this exist in the Tate? I'm pretty sure this Tower of TVs exists in the Tate. I've seen it. It's an artwork called the Tower of Babel, I think. It might look slightly different.
It's slightly different. The
Okay.
uh, That's more of a spiral. I mean, it's take that's where it's got its inspiration from, but the one in the Tate is like a column, I think.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
think it has radios in it.
yeah. But again, it comes back to that question we keep talking about. At what point? At what point do IP rules and regulations come in and copyright come in as well? Because you had
Totally.
that
Uh,
reaction. You had that reaction, which is always a bit of a worry for a copyright lawyer.
yeah, I don't know. I guess so. Um, we're not getting into copyright today. We've done it too many times, Simon.
I know we have. I'm like a broken record.
Yeah, the other one, which I just think is interesting, Adobe released this, which is basically, I think I demoed a couple of podcasts ago, me just uploading research papers and PDFs into Anthropic and searching them. They've basically just released it as a feature in Acrobat, where you can just open a PDF and be like, tell me about financial report. Um, I just think it's interesting that that's where every product is going now. They're adding an AI search assistant. So instead of 10 clicks, it's one click and a type. Uh, whether people like it more or not is interesting to me. I don't know.
So earlier on in this, and you gave that, you showed where jobs were being impacted, and we talked about writers, and I noticed that researchers were the ones that were being
Mhm.
impacted by this as well. That is a perfect example of why you don't need as many researchers, because if you've got a great big document and it's saying, "Tell me about this," then that is going to be an instant win.
Yeah, completely. People just, well, I don't know. In my opinion, the value of researchers is often they know the questions to ask. And a lot of people don't know the questions they want to ask. They sometimes do, but sometimes they don't know what they want to get out of the research. And that's probably the value I think researchers still hold.
So that's a very astute point, because that's very similar to the value that we see in writers. You still need the skill of the writers to act as editors. You still need the researchers to ask the right questions and then understand the craft of, is this analyzed properly? Otherwise, again, they're just churning out crap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. The last thing I've got for you is a conversation we've kind of been having for a couple of weeks, which is the economics of the whole thing, which is if writing passable copy is automated, if we can generate websites or images for websites in minutes, if the, if average quality content doesn't cost anything to create anymore, if it costs zero, except a subscription to GPT or whatever you've got, um, what does that mean? What does that mean for us as agencies? What does it mean for our clients? Does it mean they don't need us anymore? Um, I'm optimistic that it means they'll come to us to do more, um, rather than them saying we don't need this expenditure anymore. But what are your thoughts on it, Simon? What are the new opportunities if they say, hey, the cost of content is a quarter? What do we do with the remaining budget that we've allocated for this year? Where do you think they put it?
Well, okay, from a very practical black and white response, again, speaking from experience, it depends who's in charge of the budget.
Profit.
Is it the shareholders and the procurement guy, like a team, or is it the actual people who have been given that budget in the first place? Okay. I'd also say there's a difference between what we think and reality, because so much
Mhm.
people are just just after a profit now, right? So they just see it. If your motivation for using AI is to spend less money, that's it, then obviously the role of the agencies will decline. My experience and the conversations I'm having so far is the opposite of that for most. Some are just going to use this as a money saving exercise and put it back to the bottom line. But for those that don't, I think the role of the agencies matures, absolutely matures. You are creating more content, but it will be better. You are using your agencies. If you trust your agencies, then you are using them for counsel as well. You're using them to understand more about the strategy. If you're gonna, because it's all very well saying let's just create a vast amount more of very average content. What are you going to do with it? Because AI is also changing how media is being consumed. So if you are going to suddenly become press a button and it's going to write everything, press a button and it's going to distribute it everywhere where it needs to go and make instant campaigns, good luck to you because that's not going to happen. So the agencies spend more time learning how to manipulate AI in terms of content creation, delivery, distribution. That's where I think the role of agencies, as well as making better and more content for less money, they're also helping with the wider strategy and tactics. That's again, speaking from experience, we went into a very large client last week and we spent the day with them going through how do we be more innovative with our content. I asked them the question before we got into the conversation, what is your motivation? Is your motivation to save money? Is your motivation to scale so you create more content? Or is your motivation to use AI to be more creative? And I've got to tell you, no one's going to turn down, well, yeah, to save money, but they want that money to put back into two and three, to scale, to do more content
Yeah.
and be more creative. And again, that's going to be the role of an agency that understands how this works. That's my view.
And your estimation, and where would you put that money?
Um,
If a client, say you're a client and they came to us and you're going, I have an extra 200K in the budget.
yeah.
Today, where are you putting that money?
Well, what I like most about AI, bear with me on this, right? I think AI can personalize the relationship you have. Oh God, that sounds wanky, but I do mean that, right? Before you write blogs and you set your narrative where this load of blogs talks to this particular audience, this load of blogs talks to this particular audience, but you're using clumsy, cumbersome platforms to host that content, and it has to be quite generic. And you can target with ABM, but ABM is really expensive if you're just doing it manually, one to one or even one to many ABM. I think what AI enables us to do is to create new publications with really cool, interesting, tailored content where you are speaking to one specific audience amongst your target prospects. Because then you do it for, let's say you've got five personas, doesn't matter what industry they're in. Let's say you're targeting five personas, they're all going to have to go to one landing page, or you create loads of landing pages, or they're going to have to go to one website, or you create loads of websites. They're going to have to go to one, whatever it is, one place or one blog. Whereas now, I think you can spin up really quickly with the right skill and the creativity and the right editorial skills behind it. You can spin up different publications that you become a publisher. And we talked 10 years ago about, hey, blogs, you can become a publisher, brands can become a publisher, kind of sorts. But now you can be, you can, because you can scale, you can be more creative and exploit technology to make things more interactive. You can actually do that. We're building one at the moment, and you can do it for whatever audience you want. So I think that's where you would invest that 200K. Let's build proper, genuine publications.
Hmm, interesting. I've been asking this question to a lot of people in our team, and I find it really funny, uh, the scope of how they think. So I asked our video guy, Matt, and he was like, invest in video. I asked Natalie, our marketing ops person, she was like, tracking,
Yeah.
more analytics. I asked the content team, and it was big swings. It was, let's go get Brad Pitt on a video. I don't think you'd get that for 200K, but
Well, I don't
but
know.
yeah,
Has
it's
he
also
done film
interesting.
lately? Has he done films lately? Brad Pitt? Has he done many?
I don't know. I'm not a big Brad Pitt guy, to be
No.
honest. Uh, I think he peaked at Fight Club. Uh, I tried to watch Troy the other day. Don't do that. It's terrible. It's
I
so
haven't
hard
seen
to
it.
watch. Uh, I got about 8 minutes in and was like, I'm out.
I'm not
Uh,
gonna.
yeah, it's interesting how everyone has their blinders on a little bit to their specific niche. Um, and I don't think a lot of people are thinking broader, or maybe we don't need to think broader. It's more important to have everyone going down their own lane and being like, this is a specific problem I'm solving. But yeah, the last question along these lines that I've been thinking about while you've been talking, Simon, is there was a really good, maybe a month ago, article in the New Yorker about how it's changing the music industry. And the guy, the chairman of UMG, specifically, there was a feature on his thoughts on it. And the one question, and you can change music for content here, is AI a format change in the way music is consumed, like the transition from records and cassettes to CDs, or is it a threat to the business model, as with free downloading and file sharing? Um, I think it's both a little bit, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
I don't know. It's an industry that has changed so much, and trends come and go. I know I sound so boring saying this, but it's still it's still humans creating content on different formats to entertain and inspire or tap into emotions. And I don't really, if I'm being honest with you, I I love going to see a live band. I love putting a bit of vinyl on, but if the only way I can access a piece of music is using um, like an iPod, it's just using a streaming service, then I'll listen to it that way. You still need people who have the ability or that really unique ability to understand what makes good sound. So I suppose that's a long-winded way of saying, as a consumer of this, I don't really care as long as I'm enjoying what I'm listening to.
Fair enough. On the creating stuff, because this is another interesting line in it. The AI generated 4 different fragments of songs about cars, all with lyrics, melodies, and orchestration, and sung in the AI generated voice of the artist, which it had learned from YouTube videos. They described the experience as a combination of awe and terror simultaneously. His first thought was, this is better than anything I could have done. His second was, I could collaborate with myself on my very best day. And I thought that was such an optimistic way of looking at this.
I love that line. A combination of awe and terror at the same time. Isn't that just AI? Isn't that everything we look at that AI creates that we think,
Oh, this is
Jesus,
100%.
I could never do anything like that. But then ultimately, then you stop and think about it and think, actually, if I work alongside this thing and I let it do the donkey work and I can actually do the you know the top and bottom, I think it's just that sums up AI as a whole.
Yeah, completely. That idea of collaborating with yourself is interesting. And collaborating with yourself on your best day is just an idea that I was like, it started informing some of the AI things we've been building at Branch Road, where I'm like, okay, how do we get people to do the thing they're best at or they're special at and get the other
Yeah.
stuff out of the way?
Yeah. It's why people hire juniors and interns, right? Because they do the work that you that contributes to the final product, but you haven't got the time, or if you're doing it, it means that the output is going to, or whatever it is that you're doing is going to be less. AI for me is that it's doing the work. It's pulling together the stuff that actually doesn't matter if it's you or AI doing it. It's pulling together what's already out there, pulling it. into one piece, and it's allowing you then to manipulate it.
Yeah, the synthesis is where the value is, I think, going forward. That's an interesting insight because there's a guy called Derek Thompson who has a podcast called Plain English. He's a writer for The Atlantic. And he was talking a while ago about how AI is basically like having 1,000 interns. Like there's still a
Hmm.
grind of having to put the information in and teaching it what you already know. And like, and I think the question you posed was, is everyone just kind of become a manager of interns? Is that what the future of work kind of looks like? Is you're managing this thing that is 1,000 interns, which is kind of an idiot, and doesn't have all the tools to do what your brain can do, or all the context, which I thought was another interesting question of do we need to start training people to manage better?
Yeah, but from our perspective, from our view, where we keep talking about it's the role of the writer is evolving into more of a creative editor. Yes, you do. You then need to give them skills to be able to, because it's about like confidence. It's about how they manage the process as well, and understanding here's the stuff to worry about, here's the stuff not to worry about, here's the stuff that you know you're going to need to double check and cross reference, here's the stuff you're not going to have to worry about. So there is an art in that as well. But just going on that point of the interns, then, so I feel like I'm in good company. Would you? This is about this whole let's just let AI do everything. Would you hire 1,000 interns, stand up on a big like a big podium, and say, shout in your loudest voice, "I want you to create a piece of content that does this." Off you go. Go off and publish it. Would you? Would you trust them to do that? Where you
Mm,
don't check it, you're just saying to them, "Go off and do and publish it."
90% of the time, no, but you could roll the dice. You could roll the dice. One in 1,000 interns will do something amazing. You know,
Okay.
there's the child prodigies, and I don't think AI has the child prodigies. But maybe it does. Maybe you're rolling the dice, and one in 1,000 is like, oh, you've nailed this. This is way better than I expected. Um,
And there's
but
the thing.
no, you're right. Most of the time, we wouldn't.
But there's the thing, right? And then we are going to have to wrap this up because people are falling asleep by now. But there's the thing. AI, in my opinion, is not a single thing. AI is innovation in lots of different areas. When AI becomes a single thing in our role, is when you have someone who's mastering and understanding which bits to put together to create something that's worthwhile, that's worth engaging. So AI is not singular until you have someone understanding how to bring it together.
Completely. I think people are struggling with the blank canvas, bro. Like a lot
Yeah.
of the client stuff we talk about is there's a blank canvas and they see that there's 100 things that can be done, but they don't know which one to focus on. And they freak out and and some people are excellent with blank canvases and some people absolutely panic. Uh, Weirdly, writers are quite good at it because they're used to staring at a blank page and freaking out and then just getting on with it. On that, I'm sure our three watchers are completely bored by now. So,
Yeah.
do we wrap it
Night,
up,
Dad.
Simon?
Night, Dad. Yeah. Well, we've been through a roller coaster of emotions during this particular podcast. On that note, I'm going to say good night. You can say good morning because it's the time zones
Yeah.
that screws us all up. And I will see you next time, buddy boy.
See you, Simon.